My future husband's family insisted that the wedding had to be held according to their customs, in a language I didn't understand. Mark, my fans, simply said it was a family tradition and that I should accept it. At first, I tried not to make a fuss, telling myself, it's just a wedding, I'll be fine. But deep down, I began to feel lost, like an outsider in what was supposed to be my own big day. Mark and I met at a party hosted by a mutual friend. He had a particular kind of confidence, always the center of every conversation. He was charming, yet discreet. I was a quiet and somewhat shy girl from Texas. Despite our complete cultural and linguistic differences, there was a strong connection from the very first conversations. We mostly communicated in English, and gradually, our relationship blossomed. Mark is from Sardinia, raised in a family with strong traditional values, deeply in love with everything Mediterranean. I, on the other hand, was born into a middle-class family with entirely different principles and values. Though we loved each other, I realized this love wouldn't be easy, not just because of the language barrier, but because of the clash between two cultures. From the moment we decided to commit to each other, Mark's family was never warm toward me. They couldn't understand me, neither my way of communicating nor my lifestyle. His parents always treated me like an outsider. Though they never said it outright, the cold glances and the silence when I tried to speak to them made me feel like a stranger. They never cared about me, never asked about what mattered to me, about my family or my hometown. Mark tried to be the peacemaker, but I could see the discomfort in his eyes. He loved me, but he also couldn't change the rules and expectations of his family. Every time I voiced my frustration, he just brushed it off, saying, "You have to understand, this is how my family is." It made me feel like I had no voice in this relationship, even though I was the one directly enduring the pain. But we continued loving each other, and when it came time to face the big decision, marriage, things only got more complicated. Mark's family demanded that our wedding be organized according to their traditions, and I felt completely lost on what was supposed to be my special day. They never asked about my wishes or the values I wanted to preserve in the ceremony. Everything had already been decided. Every wedding planning meeting was conducted in Sardinian. Sitting in a large room, surrounded by cold stares and foreign words I couldn't understand, I felt increasingly alienated. This wedding wasn't mine. It felt like a play in which I was merely an extra, with no role and no say. I tried asking about important details, like the venue, the menu, or even the ceremony rituals. But instead of getting answers, I only received strange looks from Mark's family. "You don't need to understand this," his mother said, her tone cold and devoid of empathy. I just kept silent, my heart heavy. At that moment, I felt discarded. Even though I was the bride on my own wedding day, I wasn't valued. When the invitations were sent out, I was stunned to see my name spelled incorrectly. "Who did this?" I asked, my voice trembling, but no one answered. Only Mark remained silent, his eyes looking out the window as if he didn't want to face me. "It's just a small mistake," he said in a flat, emotionless voice. And that was all I got: indifference. The feeling of isolation on my own day grew stronger and stronger. Every time I raised concerns about the disrespect I was experiencing, Mark dismissed me. He never stood up for me. In his eyes, perhaps what I felt didn't matter as much as keeping his family pleased. "I just don't get it," I said one day as we sat across from each other in the living room, the air heavy between us. Mark looked at me, his eyes briefly showing concern, but he quickly looked away as if he didn't want to confront me. "You need to understand, my family doesn't easily accept people who are different," he said, his voice low but lacking resolve. "There's nothing more I can do." "Nothing more you can do? Then what am I in your life? Just a tool for you to please your family?" I felt furious, the words spilling from my mouth. "Do you love me, or do you only love what I can bring to you?" Mark remained silent, his eyes avoiding mine, unable to meet my gaze. In that moment, I realized he couldn't answer my question. Thoughts swirled in my mind. Was the love we had truly love, or was it just a bond formed under the pressure of family expectations and unchangeable traditions? His coldness only deepened my doubts. Did Mark really love me, or was he simply following his family's will, trying to uphold honor and traditions he couldn't let go of? With each passing day, I felt more and more like I didn't belong here. and I wasn't sure if I had the strength to keep going. One evening, as I sat alone in our room reflecting on everything that had happened, a conversation between Mark and me came back to me. "I love you, but you have to understand that family is the most important thing to me," he had said, his voice full of worry but devoid of emotion. "Then what am I?" I asked, trying to stay calm despite the storm raging inside. "Am I just a part of a marriage, a puzzle piece in a picture your family already painted without me?" He didn't respond. Silence. And in that silence, I felt as though I had lost myself, not as a woman, but as a mere object meant to serve the expectations of his family. I began to feel more tense and confused than ever. Had I been wrong to fall in love with him? Were our differences simply too vast to ever truly reconcile? Could I really live a life burdened by this feeling, this loneliness within the very relationship I had once placed all my trust in? Those questions haunted me, and I found no answers. Everything started to shift when Mia, my best friend, the only person who truly understood me, came into the picture. She knew Italian better than I did, and one day, she came over to visit me, like a balm to the stress that was weighing heavily on my chest. We sat in the living room drinking tea, and I told Mia about everything I was feeling, the uncertainty, the discomfort surrounding the upcoming wedding. "I feel like I don't belong here. Every time Mark's family gathers, I always feel excluded," I sighed, worry clouding my face. "Mia, do you think something's off?" Mia looked at me, her eyes suddenly serious and alert. "I get it, but you can't just sit back and let things continue like this. You need to find out what's really going on. Something doesn't feel right." The next day, just as I was trying to shake off the sadness from the night before, Mia attended one of the wedding planning meetings. Mark's family, once again, conducted everything in Sardinian, a language I still didn't understand. While I had some grasp of Italian, Sardinian was completely foreign to me. I felt utterly out of place, as if I were a stranger in my own life. Mia, with her stronger grasp of Italian, happened to overhear a conversation between a few members of Mark's family. She quietly listened to what they said, and after the meeting ended, she came back to me with a grave expression, very unlike her usual self. "Don't let them deceive you," Mia whispered, her eyes filled with concern. "This wedding, it's not just about you and Mark. They're manipulating everything." Her words hit me like a slap. I froze, unable to believe what I just heard. "They're manipulating?" I couldn't believe it. My mind spun with unanswered questions. What was happening? Everything started to blur, and the sense of unease came flooding back, stronger than ever. Within a few days, Mia did some digging and handed me several documents related to the wedding, papers written in Sardinian that I had never seen before. She managed to make copies and, in secret, translated them for me. When I sat down and began reading the translated documents, my heart felt like it stopped beating. It was as if everything in my life was crumbling before me. Each page slipped through my fingers, and I couldn't hold back the surge of emotion overwhelming me. This wasn't just a wedding, as I had once believed. It wasn't about the bond between Mark and me. It was a financial contract, meticulously drafted by Mark's family. Every word in the translation felt like a blade slicing through my heart. They had planned this all along, not out of love, but out of self-interest. I was to be legally bound to Mark's family, becoming a part of a financial arrangement I had no knowledge of. My heart felt torn apart. A wave of pain and shame rose within me, choking me. What I had once thought was love, a marriage between two people, was now revealed to be nothing more than a calculated move to resolve his family's financial issues. I was someone they had never truly cared about, just a pawn on their chessboard. I wasn't a bride. I was an economic solution to help Mark's family achieve their goals. All the memories of being treated like an outsider by Mark's family suddenly became clear. The cold stares, the dismissive remarks, it all made sense now. There was a reason for it. And that reason was me, the exploitation they had orchestrated from the beginning. "No way," I whispered, my vision blurred by tears. "I can't let them do this to me." Rage swelled inside me. I couldn't let this go on. I couldn't stay silent and let them continue using me. I had to rise up, right there at my own wedding, and face the truth that had been hidden from me for so long. Immediately, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I wouldn't let them take away my agency over my own life. They could use every trick in the book to manipulate me, but they couldn't strip me of my dignity. I would fight. I began planning, step by step, carefully, silently. I didn't want to cause a scene too early, but I couldn't let things go their way any longer. While they continued their little games, I quietly gathered documents, recorded evidence, every detail with a purpose. And I wasn't going to let them get away with using me without consequences. One step at a time, I was ready. And this time, no one could stop me. The wedding day drew near. Anxiety and fear loomed, but I knew I couldn't back down. I wasn't going to be their pawn. No matter how difficult things got, I would fight. The big day arrived, and I was ready. The rituals, the vows, they no longer held meaning. They were just a facade. What mattered to me now was telling the truth, standing up for myself. As the ceremony began, I sat quietly, my eyes drifting over the crowd, feeling like a ghost at my own wedding. I had prepared for this moment thoroughly, a moment I would never forget, and I knew this would be the turning point, where I had to face the truth, no matter how painful. The priest stood at the altar, his eyes sweeping over me indifferently. We are gathered here today to witness the union between two individuals and to bless their future together. He began in a flat tone, as if reading from a lifeless script. But before we proceed, I must remind the bride, you do not belong to this family. You will never truly understand our culture. You are merely an outsider. Each word felt like a dagger to my heart. I looked at Mark, but he stood there in silence, his eyes avoiding mine. His entire family remained quiet too, just sitting there, their eyes gleaming with satisfaction as they watched me be diminished. At that moment, I couldn't take it anymore. The fury, the heartbreak, the humiliation all surged at once. I couldn't let them do this to me. I stood up, without hesitation, and stepped forward. What? Mark's mother gasped in shock. What do you think you're doing? I didn't answer. I pulled out the small speaker I had hidden in my hand and turned it on. The room began to stir, eyes shifting toward me with curiosity. Under the dim lighting, I could see faces filled with confusion, surprise, and anger. I don't need to understand your family's culture to know I'm being treated unfairly, I said loudly and clearly, making sure every person in the room could hear. I am not someone you get to control. I am a human being, and I deserve to be respected. The entire room went silent. The air grew heavy, as if something had just cracked open. No more laughter. No more celebration. Every eye was on me, faces shifting from surprise to discomfort and then to fear. Mark's mother began to fume. What are you doing? This is my son's wedding. You can't ruin it like this. Mark's sister, Clara, stood up, her face flushed red. Who do you think you are, speaking like that? We're trying to have a respectable wedding, and you're turning it into a spectacle? But at that moment, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was no longer the timid girl who stayed silent. I stood tall, eyes locked on Mark's family, without a trace of trembling. You've used me from the very beginning, I said, my voice still firm. This isn't a wedding, it's your game. But I am not your pawn. Mark's mother and Clara tried to argue back, but this time, no one stood by their side. The other guests, who had previously stayed silent, now looked around uneasily, unsure of what to do. Some had already risen and left, unwilling to be part of the chaos. Mark still said nothing. He stood there, silent, his eyes full of regret but could no longer hide the helplessness within him. Everything was spiraling out of his control. This is the truth I've had to endure all this time, I continued, my voice unwavering. And now, I will not let you deceive me any longer. I will not marry a man like Mark, someone who couldn't even stand up for me, who lives only to please his family's expectations. Mark looked up at me, and I saw in his eyes a deep shame and despair. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't. The apologies had long been buried in him, unspoken. Thank you for showing me the truth. I turned around and walked out of the ceremony, leaving behind a room in turmoil. Not because I was afraid, but because I had freed myself from the invisible chains Mark's family had wrapped around me. As I walked away, I no longer felt pain. I felt an unfamiliar freedom. And in that moment, I realized I would never again let anyone control my life. The silence hung over the room like a heavy shadow, broken only by the sound of my footsteps. Everyone remained still. No one dared move. Their eyes all followed me. And just as I thought I had stood up against everything, another set of footsteps echoed behind me. From the back of the room, a strange woman appeared, Sophie. Sophie entered like a storm, shaking the very air in the room filled with tension and silence. She needed no introduction, no announcement. Every head turned, eyes locked on her, and no one could look away. Sophie wasn't a stranger in my life, but at this moment, she was the one forcing me to reevaluate everything. She approached with unmistakable determination. Her long hair swayed slightly with each step, and her piercing eyes met everyone's gaze without fear. Sophie stood amidst the crowd like a warrior, daring all the lies to come forward. "Don't believe what you've seen today," Sophie said, her voice sharp and unwavering. "I'm Mark's real girlfriend, not her me." I stared at her, my mind spinning. Her words hit me like a direct punch to the heart. I couldn't respond right away. The room fell into silence. Everyone was stunned, unable to believe what they'd just heard. Pain rose in my chest, and a part of me didn't want to believe it. "No, this can't be," I whispered, trying to breathe deeply, my eyes wide open to see clearly what was unfolding. Sophie didn't give me time to think. She went on, each word hitting me like a spear through the pain I was barely holding in. "Mark's family arranged this wedding long ago. They're after your assets. This wedding isn't about love. It's a financial scheme." Every word from her mouth was like a bomb detonating in the middle of the ceremony, sending the atmosphere into pieces. I felt like I was falling into a deep abyss, my chest tightening with both anger and grief. I looked at Mark, but he couldn't look back, his eyes lowered, as if he no longer had the strength to face the truth. Sophie didn't stop. She kept pushing the truth in my face. "They even tied this wedding to a real estate agreement. That's how they plan to double their gains from you." "Real estate agreement?" I couldn't believe my ears. The feeling of being completely deceived flooded over me. My anger surged to the highest level. I felt my blood boiling. I couldn't stand still any longer. I pulled a stack of documents from my purse and placed them on the table. Each document was undeniable evidence, copies of contracts, email exchanges, and translations of Sardinian documents I had carefully translated. I took a deep breath to steady myself, then turned to face the entire wedding party firmly, leaving no room for doubt. All I needed to do was expose the truth, I said, my voice steady, full of confidence and resolve. "This is the evidence. You can't deceive me any longer." I tossed a few sheets onto the table, letting them fall like heavy stones, making a loud thud in the otherwise silent room. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. I could feel the anger and disappointment from those around me, but I didn't feel weak. All the documents I had prepared, the email exchanges between Mark's family and their real estate partners, were now public. Mark looked at the papers, his eyes vacant, offering no explanation. He stood there, head bowed, unable to meet my gaze. He couldn't deny it. He had no justification. Every word I spoke shredded through the facade he had built, exposing everything. He lowered his head, and I knew he no longer had the courage to look me in the eye again. The room fell into a suffocating silence. The air was thick. Some guests began quietly leaving, retreating from the chaos, wanting no part in the scandal. Everything that had unfolded was now a hoax, one no one wanted to be associated with. Finally, Mark spoke, but his voice was choked, unable to hide his defeat. "Yes, I married her for financial gain. I didn't love her. I was just doing what my family asked." All eyes turned to him, and I could feel the collective shame from everyone present. At that moment, he was no longer the man I once loved, but a weak figure, a puppet controlled by his family. Sophie said nothing more. She stood beside me, her eyes filled with resolve, as if she too had finally found her own liberation. She had realized she was merely another piece in the game Mark's family had orchestrated, and now she had nothing left to hold on to. Mark remained silent, unable to justify anything. He stood there, his head down, too ashamed to face me. And then I saw the total collapse of this wedding. No one believed in the beautiful lives his family had crafted anymore. I stood up, my gaze unwavering. I didn't cry. I didn't feel pain or regret. Instead, I felt light. This was the liberation I needed. I walked out of that room without looking back. I knew I had nothing left to lose, but I had regained everything, my freedom, and my right to control my own life. I didn't let it all fade into silence. When the wedding exploded into chaos, I knew I had to keep fighting, not just for myself, but for everyone who had ever been used and hurt in silence. I sat in front of my computer, my hands trembling, but my will unshaken. The recordings, the images from the ceremony, the hidden documents, they were all in my hands. They were the clearest proof of the truth Mark's family had tried so hard to conceal. I couldn't let them get away with this without consequence. I began posting everything online, a relentless campaign. Every audio clip I uploaded was a damning accusation. Every photo from the ceremony was proof of their deceit. And the documents, the Sardinian translations, those were the final pieces I needed to bring the truth into the light. Within days, my story had spread across the town. People who once admired Mark's family now couldn't believe what they were seeing. Comments, posts from friends, even acquaintances of his family, all expressed anger and disappointment. Even Mark's oldest friends began to distance themselves, unwilling to be linked to such a conniving, dishonest family. Mark's family was shunned. Their business began to collapse. The contracts they'd spent years building suddenly became worthless. The social connections they had crafted with lies and appearances crumbled. No one wanted anything to do with them anymore. Everything they had built, from wealth to reputation, was now nothing but ruins. But it wasn't just Mark's family that suffered the consequences. Sophie, the woman I once believed was his real girlfriend, disappeared from my life. After the truth came out, she realized she too had been just a pawn in the family's power game. She couldn't face herself. She lost all her confidence and slowly faded from my view. I never heard from her again. Perhaps she finally understood how deeply she'd been used. Mark sent me a long-winded email. He apologized. He said he was wrong, that he was only following his family's orders, that he loved me. But I didn't reply. I didn't want his hollow apologies. I didn't need his pity. He had already lost everything. I worked with a lawyer to reclaim all of my assets. The properties I had poured my sweat and effort into for so many years were no longer in the hands of Mark's family. Every document, every contract was corrected and transferred back to me. Every legal tie I had with them was completely dissolved. I had regained control over my life. And then I moved on. Not with hatred. Not with the pain of the past. I didn't need to bury myself in anger or revenge. I walked forward in freedom, proud of who I was. I had dared to stand up, to speak the truth, to face challenges, and to confront those who deceived me. Every morning I woke up, I could feel the difference in my soul. I no longer felt afraid or powerless. I had freed myself from a life of pressure and control. I had stepped out of the shadows, out of a false relationship, and embraced a new future, one that I fully owned. And in those quiet moments, as I looked back on the path I had taken, I realized I had no regrets. I was proud of what I had done, of my decision to rise, of the strength I had found again. I had dared to live my life, unbound by anyone. And that was my greatest victory. After everything that had happened, I understood this. I didn't regret standing up for myself. The wedding may have fallen apart, but I had found freedom and strength in facing the truth, and in no longer letting anyone control my life.